Well, today we're going to dive into a fascinating spiritual concept from Hanshi Deena Naidu. It suggests that for some of us, this whole human life thing, it's our very first time. So let's get into the journey of what's called a new soul. So let's start with a big question. Are all souls created equal? According to this teaching, the answer is, well, no, not exactly. Some souls are older, way more experienced, while others are just getting started. And thinking about it this way could totally reframe how we see consciousness and even why people act the way they do.
The idea here is that the spiritual world is incredibly diverse. Souls aren't just stamped out of a cookie-cutter mold. The teaching says they're born every single day, but they pop into our world at different spiritual levels, each with its own unique history and baggage.
And these levels are basically broken down by experience. You've got new souls at the very beginning, then you have young souls who've been around for a few lifetimes, and it goes all the way up to mature and old souls. But for this explainer, we're going to zero in on that very first step of the ladder, the new soul. Okay, so what exactly is a new soul? This is absolutely crucial to get. This has nothing to do with how old a person is. We are not talking about babies. This is a spiritual idea that points to the very, very beginning of a soul's life as a human. Let's just draw a really clear line in the sand. A young or an old soul. They've done this before. They've been through the human cycle at least once. But a new soul, this is their debut, their first time on this stage. And that one little difference is the key to understanding everything else. So, to put it as simply as possible, a new soul is a consciousness that is, for the first time ever, wearing a human suit. And that brings up a really interesting question. If it wasn't human before, then what was it? All right, hang on, because this is where the theory gets really wild. The origin of a new human soul isn't some mysterious, far-off place. No, it has a direct, immediate past life, and that past life has a huge influence on its first go-around as a human. Plain and simple, in its previous life, a new soul was an animal. That's the core idea. The soul evolves, and its next big jump is from the animal kingdom right into the human one. And this quote from Hanshi Deena Naidu really spells out the impact. That animalistic nature from its past life creates a really powerful ego, a very strong sense of me, me, me. The soul is still kind of wired for those primal instincts, more so than for some higher divine connection. It's literally learning how to be human from scratch.
So, how does this actually show up in the real world? The teaching gives us 6 key signs to look for. And it's really important to say this isn't about judging people at all. It's about trying to understand a possible spiritual starting point.
So, 6 key indicators. You can think of these as little echoes from a past life, characteristics of a soul that's just grappling with this brand new, confusing human experience. Let's break them down. The first 2 are all about spirituality. A new soul might just not get the whole concept of God or a higher power. They might question it or just completely ignore it. And they might not have any deep emotional pull towards the idea of an afterlife, which, when you think about it, makes sense. These are totally new and complex ideas for a consciousness that never had to think about them before.
Okay, number 3 is about belonging. Just like animals stick together in a pack, new souls might be drawn to groups to feel safe and connected. And that can be a wonderful thing. But there's a warning here. If that community is built on fear or harm, it can actually hold them back, reinforcing those old primal instincts instead of helping them grow.
The 4th indicator gets into some of those raw survival instincts, things like aggression or just taking what you want. But, and this is so important, the teaching stresses a message of hope. It says every single person, no matter their soul's age, has the free will to choose a better path. And finally, the last 2 signs are all about mindset. A new soul driven by that strong ego might operate from a place of bias or prejudice. And the 6th sign is what's called a swaying personality, meaning they can be unpredictable, a really uncommon mix of traits, unlike a more mature soul who tends to follow more consistent divine laws. So if that's the journey, what's our part in all this? Well, this is where the whole teaching shifts from just identifying these traits to talking about our responsibility. Turns out we're not just spectators here. We're actually active players in this whole spiritual ecosystem. It's all about this beautiful cycle of nurturing. Our actions can create this amazing ripple effect.
When we treat animals with love, that love becomes a part of their soul's experience, almost like it's preparing them for the next stage. And then, when that soul is finally born as a human, our job is to keep leading with that very same loving example.
When you boil it all down, our job is to help. It's to lead by example. By living with goodness and with love, we create a better, more supportive world for a new soul to navigate. We help them through their very tough, very confusing first human experience so they can evolve. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. If every single act of kindness to an animal, to another person, is potentially helping a soul on its long evolutionary journey, how does that change the way you see kindness itself? It stops being just a nice little gesture, doesn't it? It becomes a powerful, profound spiritual act.